Have you ever been to the Nubian Show in Toronto? Well, there's a new documentary out about this BIPOC comedy showcase now in its 30th year. We have the man behind it next on Brio TV, the podcast. Hi, and welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Bill Brio. My guest today has been one of the top players in the Toronto comedy scene for more than 40 years. For the last 3 of those 4 decades, he's been the driving force behind the Nubian Comedy Revue, a YukYuks showcase for BIPOC comedians. I'm talking, of course, about Kenny Robinson, and he's at the center of this new documentary, People of Comedy, celebrating 30 years of the Nubian Show. The movie is directed by Ferrier, and it traces the show's early beginnings, where Robinson created a long overdue space for Black and racialized comedians to share their unique cultural experiences with eager audiences. Now, Kenny's also a student of comedy, and I really enjoyed talking shop with him about the comedy scene down through the years. We mentioned a lot of names and places, and I think if you're into stand-up comedy here, you will recognize a lot of them. The documentary premieres April 9th and can be streamed on Crave. You can also join the crowd down at YukYuks in Toronto and see Kenny Robinson's Nubian Comedy Revue the last Sunday of each month on Richmond Street West. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Kenny Robinson. Listen, congrats on the Nubian Show, this Crave documentary. It premieres April 9th on Crave. It's called People of Comedy, celebrating 30 years of the Nubian Show, which you created and founded and have hosted and run for 30 years. Does that seem possible, Kenny, that it's been that long?
It didn't seem like 30 years while we were doing it. It only looked like 30 years after he looked up and went, Jesus, everybody's no longer 20. Yeah. So that's how... it's so many of the comics that are the veterans of this show and of this circuit. I met them when they were like 20, 21 years old, and now they've got kids and they've got second homes and what have you. So there you go. Yeah. It's a lifetime.
It's incredible. And for folks who maybe aren't familiar with the Nubian Show, this documentary will tell you the story. It's fascinating. It's a really well-made documentary. I really enjoyed the sets and the acts and all the background.
Thank you.
It was fun to watch. Have you seen many did you see the one on the Comedy Store in LA a couple of years ago?
Oh, yes. I watched them and ate my heart out saying, if I didn't do this Nubian thing, I could have gone to the Comedy Store and got my name on the wall. And then my mother would have said, shut up. You would have starved there with the other 10 million comics waiting to get on.
Exactly. So, well, did you, though? You must have done some shows in LA.
Yes, I've done the store a couple of times. I performed once in front of Mitzi, and somebody said she actually watched you, and I went, I didn't know that was a freak. And she said, yeah, you can come back. So I flew back to Toronto 2 days later. Come back would have meant if I was going to live there. Yeah. So, but it was Toronto's where I've made my stake. I've dug my flag in, and it's been better or worse home.
You're originally from Winnipeg, is that true?
Yes, sir. Winnipeg and / Chicago, so both places are home. But I'm really trying to get rid of that dual citizenship.
Well, you might not have an option soon. It's crazy.
I want it to be part of 51 out of state in Chicago.
Exactly, exactly. But Winnipeg, a lot of talent from that town, right? Did you? Is that where you first got on stage? Your first experience.
First time I actually made a stage appearance was in Montreal. We were living there for a while when I was about 4.
Wow.
And my dad was a musician and a booking agent. So we had to go into Rockheads because he had to pick up a commission for booking some acting there. And before the band took the stage, I got away from him and I went up and I pounded on the piano a bit. And then I sang a song. He adjusted the mic stand for me. And I did My Baby Don't Care for shows. And that was the first stage appearance. There's a redhead woman in a green dress that was clapping and laughing, and I've been looking for that same redhead in every front row ever since.
Wow, that is a sweet story. I remember when I was a kid about that age. You say you were four?
Four or
4 years
five,
old.
yes.
Wow. My mom, we grew up in Etobicoke, and CFTO was brand new, Agent Court, that studio. And
Okay.
they did a Canadian version of this game show, To Tell the Truth, a panel show, if you remember that.
Judy
People,
Carlisle.
right, yeah. So people had to, is it number one, number two, number three? My mom was number two, right? Or let's not put it that way. But anyway, I'm there as a little kid, and in the bleachers, and the Canadian host, brought me down, and he showed me two notes on the piano to hit, which I did. Sorry, this story is so long, but I remember that feeling as a 4-year-old that people were responding to something, and it's kind of intoxicating, isn't it, Kenny?
It is, until you get yanked by your mother, and your arms out of your shoulder, out of the socket, and damn it, you always have to act up. Sorry, I just want to see the piano and the drums, and But yeah, well, that's why you've got these child entertainers. I mean, if you go back to the old Catskills, I mean, Jerry Lewis and all those old type of comics, their stage was the family dinner table.
Oh yeah. No kidding.
When you think about the or now with in music, the 4 or 5-year-old that sings the hell out of a hymn in church,
Yeah.
and next thing you know, she's got a number one hit on the charts. 20 years old. So there is something about it. If you get a taste of it at a young age, it can be very addictive.
When did you know this was something you wanted to really commit to?
Well, I originally wanted to be an actor, and I was taking theater at the University of Winnipeg, but all the auditions were for characters that didn't have afros. So I was kind of strike three looking. So, but I spent my high school years developing a small handful of impressions that kept the girls giggly and it kept the bullies not wanting to rough me up. So a friend of mine dared me to go on stage at a amateur comedy night they had at the Royal Albert Arms in Winnipeg. And we did it in between sets of Big Dave McLean, who just won a Juno for his album. So it was that's how it kind of got launched, the stand up part of it.
Was that McLean and McLean? Was that?
No, those guys I wound up opening 4 years later. And then after I had opened up for them and after one of them passed, I found out that they lived just down the street from where I grew up on Dowling Street in Winnipeg.
Wow.
So I'm going, man, if I knew that, they'd have had enough of me, because I'd have been at that back door with a case of beer, trying to get to know them better all the time had I known they were just down the street from me.
They were ahead of their times in some ways, that's for sure.
Oh, absolutely. We stand on their shoulders. I mean, They were our Lenny Bruce. They got arrested for obscenity back in 1972 and 73. Yeah. I remember I had a date with this girl that I was so shy to even ask out, but I had tickets for Lighthouse. And McLean were the opening act, and I could not crawl underneath the seat in front of me enough to hide when they started doing their shtick, because I had not been exposed to that material in like grade 11 or grade 10, whatever it was. Grade 10 going into grade 11. So I had never heard that type of entertainment before. So actually, I'm president of the Canadian Comedy Hall of Fame, and one of my goals are trying to get McLean into the Canadian Hall of Fame.
Yeah, of course.
But we know all about Wayne and Schuster, and we know all about the King of Kensington, but it's a little tougher to get the brothers into the hall.
Well, it's a worthy cause. Wish you luck. Now, talk a bit now. The Nubian Show, I understand you were performing at YukYuks for Mark Breslin there for many years, and he came to realize that he was not playing to the whole room, right? That the audience needed to hear from a more diverse crowd.
Well, there was no diversity for the most part,
Right.
Definitely in the audience. I used to say if there were more than 4 blacks in the audience, they were Ronnie Edwards' comps. They were his family that came to see the show. So very seldomly would you ever see more than 3 or 4 in any given night.
Yeah.
And as far as on the stage, I think at that time there might have been 7 or 8 black comics across the country. That's from Halifax to Vancouver. And that would be like myself, Ronnie Edwards, Greg Morton. If there was any justice, he'd be a huge, huge star. Gene Clark, but he also had the acting to go with. Evan Carter, who was here before I was. And, there's, like I said, there's a handful. And, so definitely there was some changes. It was time for some changes.
I didn't realize Gene Clark did stand-up. I mean, he was a hell of a director as well, right? He had quite a career.
Well, Gene was an actor. Gene voiceover. Gene played NFL, played CFL for the Argos, sing some jazz, play the saxophone. So Gene is a very he was the Lion King. So Gene is a very talented and blessed individual.
Yeah, no kidding. Back after this break with comedian Kenny Robinson.
Around here it's called a varsity blues. Went to a pub, went to a party with a little bit of work you might get a B. Your books are overdue, the school is gonna sue, and your doc's gonna give you the third degree. You get that aching feeling when your essays due. Around here it's called a varsity blues.
Time once again to check in with Emily Gagne to see what's new on Hollywood Suite. Emily, what do you got?
Well, this month, Bill, we've got a new episode of Cinema A to Z, which is our original series. And the topic this time is acting debuts.
Acting. So these are the first films of some famous stars. Go ahead and quiz me. Throw a name at me, see if I can get the film.
How about Barbra Streisand?
Oh, that's The Mirror Has Two Noses. Is that No. It's Funny Girl.
Yes, okay. A little further back.
All right. Okay. Well, that sounds pretty good. What else do you have coming up this month?
Well, we've got National Canadian Film Day, April 16th. So we've got Canadian films all day. But if you are in more of a, funny mood, it's April Fool's Day. We've got our LOL collection, got comedies from throughout cinematic history, everything from, The 7-Year Itch to Caddyshack to Liar Liar to The Nice Guys, which I think is an underrated comedy.
Oh, that's a funny film. Well, that sounds great. Looks like a good time to laugh in Canada on Hollywood Suite. Thanks very much, Emily.
Thank you, Bill.
Please welcome fabulous Kenny Robinson!
Doing tonight?
Here he is again, Kenny Robinson. So you just walk me through the process then of how, I think it was your suggestion to Breslin, right? Breslin, you see him in this documentary. He is the proprietor, the impresario of YukYuks for 50 years now, whatever that is. Maybe not quite that long, but a long time, right?
He's the man that created stand-up comedy as a business and an art form in the country.
Yeah.
There's a reason why he's got that Governor General's medal, So, basically, I had done a show with Ronnie and another comic from Buffalo with 3 or 4 hip-hop acts at the Opera House, and it was the first time I had a predominantly black audience. So I'm thinking there's a market for this. Then the material I was doing, they were just going berserk over. I was talking about racial profiling and all these types of things. So I was making plans to do a black comedy night, but I definitely hadn't thought I would. I didn't think Yucks would be interested. And then one of the younger comics that felt that there was. They were not being judged for laughter by their peers, suggested to Mark, her name is Tarandella, said that, well, maybe if we had a black show, and Mark said, a black show. So then Mark asked me, would I be interested? And it took me about 3 seconds to say yes, because I was going to do it. I just had no idea that I could do it there. I was expecting to do it in Cuddy's or one of those old clubs that was popular in the black community back then. So, you're offered the biggest club and the biggest chain of comedy clubs in North America. It's a question that you don't have to blink twice before you answer. And our first show, we turned away 150, 200 people at the door. So,
Wow.
It's been a monster ever since. 30 years. It's hard to keep it going 30 years, but here we are.
No, congratulations. I mean, comedy it's like everything else. It's cyclical. It goes up and down. And I'm sure there were some lean years in between there, but what's the scene
this
like?
Year's lean.
Is it?
I say that every year. I mean, we used to sell out the day after, like if the show was Sunday, the box office was closed Monday, Tuesday, we'd be sold out. But now there's so many competing shows, usually by the same comics that I brought up through the ranks that everybody's broken off. And, there's this show in Scarborough, there's this show in Ajax, there's this show here, this show there Saturday night. So, whereas once I was the one of only, now I'm just the originator.
Well, folks who will see the doc will see some great stand-up comedians. There's, Russell Peters. We all know I've lived in Brampton for 35 years. Every second street's named after Russell Peters.
Really?
You go to get your tires changed, and they have Russell Peters' hockey stick signed on the wall. And Hassan Phills, Crystal Ferrier.
Ferrier, yeah.
Ferrier, pardon me.
Yeah. I mispronounced her name too.
Now Zambrina Douglas.
Sabrina Douglas is a killer.
She's fantastic in this doc, and I believe she's from Brampton, and she does a bit about how you sort of encounter a new level of racism in long-term care centers. She's a nurse for many years.
Yes, hilarious.
And my mom has been in a long-term care for several years, and it was a fascinating little bit of insight, because it's true. Older people aren't always the most accepting, right?
Aggressive.
Yes.
No filters.
Right. So fascinating that she was able to spin that into comedy, which is the goal of everybody, right?
They say if you don't laugh, you'll cry. Yeah, so right. So it's just one of the things. I mean, she's still working as a nurse. She's still nursing during the day and doing comedy at night. She's the hardest working person in showbiz.
Yeah.
And I love the material she does. She goes, they don't teach you in nursing school what to do when they die. They don't teach you to close their eyes. Yeah. And, you're like, so she's got all kinds of material about being a caregiver, and it's all hilarious.
Wow. Now, the folks who are featured, they are saying you won't find an audience that will give you the high coming off the stage that you find at the Nubian Show, that this is different, that the level of response, but it seems to be a pretty tough room as well. Like there's scenes of guys getting pelted and booed. And,
definitely.
Talk a bit about the audience for the shows that you do.
The audience is wild. It's simmered down a bit, but if they really enjoy what you're doing, they do it. I think it's known as the Scarborough gun salute, where you boop, 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 where you pretend you're shooting in the air. And I tell you, after getting that, regular laughter just doesn't cut it anymore. It's like going from homegrown weed to some crack. It's just not the same buzz. And if they don't like you, they boo you. And I think that's a bit of that American influence from Showtime at the Apollo that was showing, that was quite popular on the UHF channels back in the day. But the comics are great as far as being booed. I mean, it definitely lets you know that you're not everything you thought you would be. And even veterans like John Paul and Mark Trinidad, they say that, they've been with me 30 years, 29 years, they've been with the show. And they still say every time they hit the stage, they're still nervous because you never know if that audience is going to turn on you. Yeah. So, and I love it. I say, why should they accept the mediocrity? And if an act shows like they haven't taken any thought to what they're going to do or how they look or how they present, it's disrespectful to the paying audience. They paid the high ticket. Was not a high ticket price, but everything's high right now. When we started, I think it was $8 to get in. So you pay to get in. Then you pay for your parking. Then if you have kids, you pay for the babysitter. And then if you order some food and some drinks, you've dropped $100 bill before I've said good evening. So if an act doesn't act like it's an honor to be in front of the crowd, then, and if they're not delivering, then definitely they deserve the bum's rush.
Toronto's an expensive city. That's part of it, right? And although the other thing that's clear from the documentary is how, and I think you say this as well, this show for 30 years could not have existed anywhere else but Toronto. That there's just one guy's suggested there's just what's the phrase? Man, it's about a special sauce.
I think
yes, that's a great word.
Yes, it was Hassan Phills.
Yeah. Is that true? You feel that Toronto is probably unique and able to put this together?
Well, I think, we've taken it on the road to Montreal, and it did well there. Then other people started doing shows in the area. It didn't quite work the same way in Mississauga.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah, so, it seems you need that downtown city core. But basically, I think you have to have, you have to have the crowd. The audience is what dictates it. So, I mean, Toronto having the largest and most diverse audience in the country, naturally it's going to be strongest here. I think it's a little bit edgier than you might find in a Vancouver crowd. Or as I did a joke for Black Lives Matter, they had a rally in Edmonton, but they had one in Vancouver, which is funny because there are no Black lives in Vancouver. They had to round up brown people and give them Afro wigs and give them berets with dreadlocks on them. So I think Toronto, maybe Halifax might.
Yeah.
Might, because they've got a large Black population, and they were there before Canada was a country, basically. When you think about back to the history and the king saying, if you want to come here and swear loyalty to the crown, you can be a free man. We're still going to treat you like a second class citizen, but you can be free and second class here. Right. So the history of Nova Scotia, that's but even then, I can't really say it would be the same thing as in Toronto. It's a Toronto beast.
Well, you need to have the talent there as well, for sure, to entertain. And if you just look at Brampton, I've always thought, my God, is there a more diverse set of comedians than Russell Peters, Michael Cera, Scott Thompson, and Sean Majunder? I mean, they all either lived in or came from or went to school in Brampton, yet they all emerged from that city with a style and a humor that's special, right?
Well, once upon a time, you could say it about Scarborough. Mike Myers was Scarborough.
Yes, right.
Jim Carrey was Port Huron, but Jim Carrey lived in Scarborough for a while.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where John Candy was, but I mean, it's just, I guess, different communities have their class clowns, at a greater time. If you go back to Winnipeg, Winnipeg gave us Monty Hall and David Steinberg, and then it gave us the Bly brothers, who are Alan and Gary, who are two of the biggest television producers in the history of television. Everything from the Richard Pryor show to the Sonny Cher show. Smothers, exactly. So I mean, every town has every dog has its day, and every town has its person or people to be proud of.
I did a podcast with Gary Bly about a year ago, talking about his late brother and his own career. Incredible. These guys were the guys in LA for 20 years, making it all, right? It's they've their influence on all of us is stunning. And you're right, Winnipeg guys, it's pretty cool. One guy in the special you showcase is, of course, Russell Peters, who you call the Brown Sinatra. Does he travel with mobsters?
There's been people you would kind of raise your eyebrow.
Okay.
There's when I was with him one time down in Arizona, there are all these MMA boxers, and his favorite sport are the combative sports. So boxers, kickboxers, martial artists, always around. But I call him the Brown Sinatra because his heart and his generosity is huge. There's a guy that was a middleweight champ, I believe. I can't recall his name, but somebody got their purse stolen. He chased after him to get the woman's purse back. He wound up getting murdered. Guess who paid for his funeral?
Oh my goodness!
Wow. Patrice, I shouldn't. One comic that was considered quite big, but he really didn't get it. He died right as he was starting to make his big money. He's considered a saint in New York City as far as the comics go. Russell took care of that. Russell hears somebody's having a hard time or somebody's parent just died. He's there for that. So, more than anything else, the grace and the character of the man is why I would call him the Brown Sinatra. Plus, nobody from, I can't think of any comic from Canada that has risen to the heights he has.
Yeah, no, he
sells out everywhere in the world. He sells out. I remember one time he was on a talk show and Jay Leno going, "Where are you next?" And he goes, the Sydney Opera House in Australia. And Jay kind of went, "Oh." And I could kind of see, well, Jay's not familiar with the Sydney Opera House.
That's true. One spot he hasn't been to.
You know New Jersey, but you don't know down under, you know?
Well, you're right. Like Russell could sell out at any city in Vietnam and China, and yet strangely, he could walk around downtown LA and no one would recognize him. You know, it's a
weird. They do
recognize
him. When I was in San Francisco with him, there was two Saudis that walked down the street. You are Russell Peters. I know you. And Russell goes, nice watch. I give it to you. And the guy took his watch off, and Russell goes, because Russell's only got 9,000 Rolexes.
Oh, no.
I think sometimes the guy goes, we don't have the money to pay you, but here's a Rolex. He goes, okay. So, so the guy takes off his watch, and Russell goes, no, I can't. And this guy, if a Saudi gives you a gift, he does not take it back. So Russell said, well, thank you very much. And I said, wow. And I said, those guys, I'm thinking maybe they're poor students. And the Russell said, there's no poor Saudis in America. You got to have money to come to America. There's no poor Saudis. Sure. So then I said, let me see the watch. And then I looked it up to see what it was worth, because I'm shallow that way. Sure. And it was still, it was a gesture that I've never seen ever in my life.
Yeah. No, it's incredible. Well, Kenny, I know you're not handing out Rolexes, but you're known for your generosity as well. You really look after a lot of these folks at the Nubian Show, but you give back to the community, don't you? I mean, you may be too modest to talk about this, but I saw you once. My son, Dan Brio, was working on Vice Net. He was working for Vice Network. They did a show called Good People. Not 5 years ago, they shot it. Jane Finch, there was a boxing match between these cops and these gang members. Yes. You remember this? And there you were in the center of the ring and looking after that. So you involve yourself in the community in many ways, which is commendable. So
I try to when they'll have me. Usually my bad reputation keeps some kind of arm's length. But the thing I'm proudest of right now is the comedy workshops that I do at a different book list. It's or now it's called the Blackhurst Cultural Center. It's at Bathurst and Bloor. I do comedy workshops every Monday. And, we go for high schoolers, but we're getting younger adults that are interested in becoming professionals. So I try to share what I've learned along the way. And then we bring in guest speakers, for script writing. We brought in a couple of people that have an improv background to teach improv. We bring in some people that are like inside industry. A friend of mine, Ben Miner, he used to be with XM Radio, and he was saying, what you have to do if you want to get your album on the air and get played, and what are the requirements and the quality and what's have you. So we try to school the kids, everybody's a kid when you're 67. We try to school the youngsters along the way, the shortcuts or anything that we've learned the hard way. There's a lot of booby traps and mines you could step on. I have a reputation for being a blue comic, and yet I'm grabbing these kids, I'm shaking, I'm going, if you work clean, then you work in December. If you're dirty, you don't get Christmas parties. Smart.
Very practical.
Yeah, from middle of November to January, for the last 25 years, I've been unbookable. It's a good thing I work in the off months, so Santa's still able to make his visits. But I tell the comics now, I said, if you want to get TV, if you're going to say that, you lose it the minute that comes out of your mouth. Trust me. And they go, yeah, but you've done more TV than the clean guys. I go, because I've been special and I've been lucky. But if I was clean, who knows what would have been, what could have been for me.
Well, that's true. I looked up your IMDb. You got Due South, I think, is one of your credits, right? You got shows all up and down the decades.
Oh, I did Radio Free Roscoe, which was a kids show. I did that for 2 or 3 years. And one time I was out west performing, and a drug dealer that was hanging out in the bar, man, I used to watch you on Radio Free Roscoe. Whatever you want tonight, I'll pay for.
Wow.
And I'm going, wow. And I'm going, these criminals watched me when they were children. So I imagine it'd be the same thing if the Friendly Giant was in a bar. Friendly, let me buy you a double.
Wow, that's funny. Don't go away. Kenny will be right back. What's new this month on Paramount Plus? Well, first up, dive into the intricate web of a powerful crime family in the Paramount Plus original series, Mobland from Guy Ritchie. Tom Hardy, Pierce Brosnan, Helen Mirren, and Joanne Froggatt all star. In mid-April, catch the premiere of The Carters, Hurts to Love You. This two-part documentary looks back at teen heartthrobs Nick and Aaron Carter. Their story is told by Aaron's twin sister, Angel, who unpacks the complicated family dynamics that led to the untimely death of 3 of the original 5 Carter kids, as well as their father. Speaking of music documentaries, Paramount Plus has the season 2 premiere of Family Legacy, which offers a peek inside the lives of influential musicians and bands through the lens of their close family members. This season features interviews with relatives of Busta Rhymes, Lil Wayne, Rob Thomas, Daddy Yankee, Lil Jon, and more. There's not little about this month on Paramount Plus. There's lots for the entire family. Check it out.
Decider calls it a pulse-pounding restaurant drama that's a British cousin of The Bear. And Rotten Tomatoes, which they do not cook with in this show, says it's a culinary drama with palpable tension simmering beneath the surface. They're talking about Boiling Point, a 5-part BBC Studios production based on the BAFTA award-winning film of the same name. Set in London, Vinette Robinson stars as the head chef leading a new crew in one of the city's latest big-money, high-pressure restaurants. Compelling, intense, and very complicated. That's Boiling Point, premiering exclusively in Canada March 13th on Super Channel Fuse.
And we're back. You mentioned 67. I am 67. You and I are both born in 1957, I presume.
58, so you're even older than
I'm older than you. See, this white beard didn't come it came naturally.
But it was hard earned, sir.
It was. Thank you.
I see the wisdom in those white eyebrows.
I appreciate that.
I see the laughter and I see the tears of 68 years.
Exactly. You know it. And another guy who was born a day or two after me was Mike Bullard. And I know you worked and did a lot of stuff with Mike. Sad that he has left us so young, right?
Mm-hmm. And before Mike, I knew his brother, Pat.
Oh, my God. Yeah.
Yeah. And, Pat.
Great
Pat
producer. Yeah.
Great producer. I thought he was going to be a Ted Danson type, but he found his fame and fortune behind the camera.
Yeah. Did he ever? Did a lot of shows, a lot of big sitcoms. Brent Butt's show, I think, and different people.
Oh, Reba McEntire, he was a showrunner for that. And,
yeah.
And, so many other shows that are, Tim Allen's work. He's been, very influential and behind Tim Allen's shows recently. So, yeah, he's had a knockout career.
He sure has. And I'm always interested when comedians, when anybody starts out in this crazy business, and you go through all of these challenges just to get up on stage that first time, but to do it, where did you have the drive or the stick-to-itiveness to? Because I'm sure you had some challenging times. What pushed you, besides talent and everything else? Where did you get that drive, I guess, is what I'm asking.
Love of the art form.
Okay.
There's times when I said, man, I wish I never quit my job working at the tractor factory in Winnipeg. I'd have a pension and the house would be paid for. And then I go, well, no, they wouldn't. They closed the factory back around 82. Remember? I went, oh, yeah. You forget these things that go with life, and I go, but what have you done? Well, you've raised and you've educated 3 kids, sent them all through university and what have you. I've performed everywhere from South Africa to London, England, to done cruise ships.
Wow.
I've got to perform and meet some of the greatest talents of this generation, of my generation. I've got to sleep till noon on most days.
That sounds cool.
When I was 19 or 20, I thought it would be great to to be a gentleman of leisure and dress like Iceberg Slim, and now I look and I've gone through several fads of wardrobe and of excellence that in what I wear on stage and in general.
Some pretty cool hats too, there, Kenny.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
It's. My father was a fedora wearer, so and it came. That was the era, and that was the period, and that was. That's what I grew up. Hey, that's why they look at the old pictures of baseball games or hockey games in the 50s and 60s, and they're still knocked out by how women wore gloves or men wore suits and tie to go see the Leafs and wore a fedora. And then when you got a hat trick, I remember there was some hockey documentary by a Canadian Film Board. There was a hat trick, and you see all these wonderful, gorgeous fedoras just thrown on the ice. And now a guy scores a hat trick, you get a ball cap. But that ball cap's $60 now.
Right. Yeah. I collect old 16 millimeter films. I have some Toronto Maple Leaf reels and 62, 64. And you're right. You see the crowd filing into Maple Leaf Gardens and they look like they're dressed for, I don't know, a funeral or they're just to the nines was the expression, right? And
to testify in front of the commission on illegal activities. I mean,
there you go.
That was the look.
Exactly. Back in the day.
So I guess you got a lot of Eddie Shack stuff, eh?
I do. Yeah. Yeah. A bit of Shack for sure. I've got, he's in the 62 and 67 one I've got for sure. The Entertainer. Did you know Eddie?
I met him once.
Okay.
Yes, I couldn't really say I knew him, but when you think Maple Leafs, it's hard not to think of him. I've done a couple of golf tournaments where Johnny Bauer was there and what have you. So I was living stateside during their heyday. I was in Chicago while they were at their key, but it's always great to see the hockey cards, the guys that were on your hockey cards you got as a kid.
For sure. Just quickly, do you think Just for Laughs? I know you've performed there over the year,s Is it going to come back in Montreal, do you think? What's the status?
I think so. It'll be different players, different, but Montreal is too much of the fabric of that city.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, the Beaches or the Toronto Jazz Festival have lost their biggest sponsor. So is the Jazz Festival dead in Toronto? No. It'll come back, maybe smaller, maybe greater, maybe more underground, maybe more grassroots. It's like people are saying Pride is gone. No, Pride isn't gone. They just don't have the same corporate sponsorship they're getting previous years.
Yeah.
So I definitely believe that JFL will be back in Montreal. And one of the problems may be that JFL got big, so was playing everywhere and had tours everywhere. They may have overextended.
Yeah, that's true.
Some people stateside don't know that JFL was not the Montreal Just for Comedy Festival.
Right.
They just thought it was JFL, and it's in Montreal. But it was Montreal that was the largest comedy festival in the world.
Yeah, it leaves a hole. A bunch of my friends, we were going to go to a ball game in the States. We're not going in the States now. And a lot of other people are looking for destinations in Canada. And Montreal, Just for Laughs, man, that was a party that went up and down a lot of streets. So I hope they do figure it out.
Well, and they still got the Jazz Fest there.
Yeah, that's true. Movie festival. Now, the YukYuks, okay, that's coming up. But I wanted to ask about the Comedy Hall of Fame. You mentioned you're president, the Canadian Comedy Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. And just, I talked to Tim Progosh about this, and it just didn't seem to work this year, Kenny. What's going on there? Is it going to happen? What's the follow-up?
Yeah, we're still working on it. Last year, the gala was held in Hamilton, and even though Hamilton's rebuilding, it's a tough haul. And we had a deal with Go Transit that if you're going to the festival, that you got to ride Go for free. Well, it was much easier to have people buy tickets when we were at the Royal York and you got off the TTC right underneath. And if you're drunk, you walked 100 feet and you got on the train, you went home. So we're working on trying to find somewhere else to do it for this year. And make it happen again. It's terrible. Canadians brag about about the quality of our comedy and the history of our comedy. They're first to brag, Canadian, but you ask them for $25 for a lifetime membership, and you may as well ask them to pull their teeth with pliers without any pain relief.
Ouch. Have you been to the National Comedy Center in upstate New York or down?
I've been meaning to, but I just never had a chance to.
Yeah, I haven't either, but it seems like that might be something to look at in terms of where you want to go with this, I hope. Best of luck.
We're looking for a permanent home, and people can come and see, the sets of the Red Green Show, and maybe they could try on. They can buy replicas of the King of Kensington sweater. I mean, anything and everything's possible.
Did you come up with the title Nubian Show?
Yes.
Very funny.
Originally it was called the Nubian Disciples of Prior.
Yeah.
At the time, I was listening to this rap group, and they were called the Disposable Heroes of Hypocrisy. So I wanted to have a catchy name like that.
Yeah.
And we were having a hard time. We said, well, we didn't want to call it the Black Show. And I had some other names that the people involved went, oh, no, I don't want to be a part of anything called that. So I just, I was playing with names, and the name Nubian came to me in a drunken dream. And then I thought, well, the reason why you're doing this is because Richard Pryor was your biggest influence. I went, so you're a disciple of Pryor. So I went, well, why are we doing the show? Well, because we are the Nubian Disciples of Pryor. And then we dropped off Pryor because we figured his wife at the time, who was guarding his legacy and his name fearlessly, we didn't want to get hit with a cease and desist or anything like that, so we just dropped Pryor out. So then became Nubian. Then we thought, well, we may be alienating hopes of getting sponsorship by calling it Disciples All Black Comedy. So then it became Kenny Robinson's Nubian Comedy Revue. So same show, different name.
All right. Well, people can look it up, but it's clever. And also, there's a scene in there in the middle of the documentary. You've got a comedian, Marito Lopez.
Yes.
He's
Antonio Lopez. Yes.
5'2" of funny, and he. It's a very sweet scene. There's feathers flying around. There's like a pillow fight going on, and Claire de Lune is playing, and he's having this very intimate talk with another comedian. But it's a very
Crystal, I believe.
Yeah,
Yes.
very sweet. Yeah. It's a very sweet part of the doc. It's at the relationship, because this is a tough gig sometimes. Comedians need comedians, and you see a bit of that bonding in this documentary, which is lovely, right?
Yes, his mom had just passed away, so it was a real tender, kind of, harsh, tender and harsh, a confliction of emotions, and having lost my mom, I understood how that was. There was one time I hadn't heard from her for a day or two, and I used to talk to her every day. And so I went to her apartment, and she had diabetes, and dementia was starting to hit in. That's why I knew I had to get her taken care of. No longer could we have the ladies that came into her 3 times a week, but I had to send her to the hospital in an ambulance and say, I'll come see her after the show. Then I went from her apartment to the show with my mother in an ambulance, and I jumped, showtime, so it's the show must go on. I love you, Mom, but I got to go make the rent. And if I need to buy you any special chairs, I got to go get that money from the door. Otherwise, we can't do it. So, you do what you have to do to continue.
Well, there must be something of her in you that gave you that drive that she would appreciate. Despite,
I wish I was as tough as she was.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I hear you. Yeah. My mom the same. My mom just turned 100.
Oh my!
I know.
God bless you and her.
I know. Very lucky, and she's being cared for like folks that are part of the comics on your show. Zambrina. Same.
What do you get your mother when she's 100?
She has dementia, so she's not quite sure who I am, which sometimes is good. So every time I just show up and help there, it's a gift for me. So it's pretty hard to figure stuff out for her, though. You're right. She's someone else. But Kenny, listen, congrats. Let's tell people again, People of Comedy celebrating 30 years of the Nubian Show. That's April 9 on Crave. You can stream it there.
And if you want to see the show live, we're the last Sunday of every month at YukYuks.
That's fantastic. Now, I'll just quickly mention, I actually was myself and a buddy, Pat Bullock. We did some stand-up way back, probably around when you were starting or just before even. We were
Bay Street or Church?
Bay Street.
Okay, that's when I came in.
Downstairs, and it was you had to play YukYuks, right? If you could go to Alistair's, you could go to Cafe on the Park, you could go to these places, but all people wanted to know is, had you played YukYuks, right?
That was the name.
Yep.
I could tell a girl I'm doing 5 minutes at the Brunswick House in between the old World War II songs, but unless you're YukYuks, you
Right.
just weren't worth knowing.
Yeah. And it was quite an experience, and to be part of that culture, however briefly. But that's why I admire you, because that the drive and the stick-to-itiveness just so important. And do you see that in the young comics that are performing?
Even more so, they know more about the internet, so they're pushing their own shows. Sabrina's a perfect example. She'll do 4 or 5 mics a night.
Wow.
And then still get up and take care of elderly racists. So she Dave Merhaj is another comic. He didn't make it to the special.
He's terrific.
He's another guy.
Yeah.
Can't give him. Back when he was climbing, you couldn't give him enough mics.
Yeah. He's very talented. You must have seen back in the day that Mike McDonald, some of these guys. What were some of the people who inspired you, I guess?
Well, Wayne Fleming was my best friend.
Wow.
So there's Fleming. And then, of course, Fleming had Jim Carrey with him all the time. And then Ted Wallachin was a guy that I knew to be bigger than big.
Yeah.
I still keep in touch with Frenchie McFarlane.
Oh, Frenchie, yeah.
Gary David.
God, Gary David.
For him.
I remember him doing the clubs at Alistair's. He had a joke about Vietnam was Buffalo with streetlights or something.
Yeah.
Remember that?
I get to the border. Do you got any firearms? No. Well, here, take this. You're going to need it. Gary was the last of the Starvin' Marvin strip club comics.
Is he really? Oh, my God. Isn't that amazing? It was quite a scene back then with those guys. And
different from the YukYuks. They had a whole different scene.
Yeah.
Because they did Starvin' Marvin and the Brown Derby and all those places. They were more of the nightclub, strip club generation as opposed to the bunch that came up in the comedy club environment. Gary David was the only one practically out of that gang that was able to change his act into the comedy club. And that's why he, his opening line was, "I know what you're thinking. F, he's old." That was his opening line. And of course, the young people in the audience loved it. "I told my wife to act her age, and she gone." So he had that delivery and those great old jokes.
The sad thing is, Kenny, he was younger than we are now.
Right? We never knew Gary's age.
No, that's true. But he had to be in his 60s when I saw him, I think.
He told me stories of being in Korea. So, he was old when I met him. We never knew how old.
You mentioned Wayne Fleming. My buddy Pat and I, we would go up to Tickles in Barrie. Right?
Yeah.
And Wayne was the MC up there. He would do Groucho, he would do all that crazy shtick. And then Carrey would come on. I remember Pat and I would do our bit, and then Jim Carrey came on, and we took one look at that and just said, we got to quit. What is this? This is pointless.
It took him years to pay off the debt he built up trying to run that club in Barrie's.
Yeah, he
lost his shirt on that. So, he goes, "I only got one more payment to make, and then I'm done with that club."
Well,
so, I got here when it closed, but I heard Rick Solomon had some act he did with a fish, and he left it in the green room and stunk the green room out for weeks afterwards.
There were some interesting characters who ran that club, and God bless Wayne that he got out of there with his shirt and whatever.
He paid him.
Yeah, I bet he did. Quite a character. Listen, Kenny, lovely reminiscing with you and all this stuff. But again, hats off to you. This is a great documentary.
Thank you, sir.
People want to find out what it's all about. Do see People of Comedy celebrating 30 years of the Nubian Show. Kenny Robinson, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure, sir.
I want to thank Kenny Robinson once again, and he wears a lot of hats, literally, on the 30 Years of the Nubian Show documentary. Don't miss it. Thanks, as always, to producer Phil Hong for 5 years of hacking these raw recordings into finely tuned gems. Kudos as well to BJ Del Conte, Paul Boudra, and all the crispy critters, including Stephen Dudley, for the music heard on this podcast. Finally, thanks to you, listener. If you liked what you heard, please spread the word. I'm Bill Brio. Thanks for listening.